Hey guys, it's JannLee here again. I've just wrapped up my match with opperwezen. It's a bit late for me at the moment. It's about, it's nearly 2 a.m. actually. But while the games are still fresh in my head, I thought I'd go through the matches. Um, Initial comments: this was a very closely fought match, very tough. I prepared very heavily for this match. You can see we've played nearly 2,500 games against each other, so we know each other quite well. But look, I mean the uh, the running scores on paper, don't reflect what can happen in a 10-game match. I mean, opperwezen has certainly had some long running streaks against me in the past. So going into this, I treat it as if we're equals. Anything can happen in a 10-game match. So I actually prepared a couple hours for this one, particularly for opperwezen, because I figured he'd bring his A game today, and also the way he plays is a little bit like me. He's looking for interesting openings. Um, we're already here, Queen D4. I mean, this is something new. By and large, I was disappointed though, because most of what I had prepared he'd avoided. And I found out after the match he'd also prepared a few hours as well. So we had both taken this very seriously, and it came out to be a very good match. So this particular opening line with the knight e5, bishop f8, I played a few times against Juan. I'm suspecting he may have had a few look at those games. But he took a long time on Queen D4, so yeah, not sure if I also avoided his preparation. I mean, I more often play Bishop C5. I've opted to play Bishop E7 to do something new. And here's where it gets interesting. So I've got the Bishop on F5. I thought that would put me in a better standing, but then Pawn at E6 starts causing problems. So yeah, I played Bishop D6 to give myself the coverage on E5 from checks, but also square on F8 for the king to move. But then knight at F7 is a problem, and I don't really like my position. Instead of bishop at D6, I think Queen E7 may have been one option, but then knight at D4 still looks troublesome. So this is all unfamiliar, so I'm not really sure if grabbing the knight on F5 is all good. I thought it was better than what came out in the game. So here knight at F7 is clear. I think white has to try to recover some material. The idea of knight at E5 is to hit the queen and also cover F7, so that if he captures my queen, I'm covering mate. The sequence I was looking at here was knight takes D8, rook takes D8, queen F4, threatening the bishop on F5, and also threatening to take the knight on E5. My answer to that was bishop at G6. He decided to take the rook instead. I feel like this queen on C4 is poisoned. Rook at F7, pawn at D7 didn't look good, but maybe I could have gone Queen D7, ED, bishop takes D7. It might just be holding, but it looked ugly. I think rook takes D7 at the end of that's not so good either. So I've developed with knight F6, which also covers the D7 square. I was thinking of taking or taking the queen. Look, in hindsight, you see things differently. Maybe knight F7 and queen E7. Yeah, I don't even know if that's much better. The problem for me is that H8 is now vacant and the rook can be placed on there. At this point, I realised I thought I had king E7 here against rook at H8, and then I realised queen at F8 was simply mate in one, because I thought I'd covered F7, I thought I'd covered D7, I thought I'd covered E8. I forgot about F8, and here I nearly thought I'd blown the game. In fact, if I take it with the king, he'll have pawn at F7, and it's all over. Now, queen at F3 here, I can't take the queen because of queen at F7. I was threatening rook at D1 mate. I thought that would be my saving grace, but he's effectively forking my bishop on F5 and my bishop on H5. I've had to defend with rook at E5 to at least cover one of my bishops, and then play pawn at g4 to cover the other one, and still hold on to the f7 square. So now he's running short on time, but we're both scrambling here. I'm just trying to get rid of the pieces that are near my king. f7, of course, is the mate threat. And now he's running very short on time. So look, we opened with a really fiery match here. And I was just being cautious here. In the end, it looked okay. I forgot I had the bishop on e8 for a moment, so I had plenty of coverage at the back. I've now eliminated all pieces in my half, so I've got a safe king, and then I'll proceed to attack. So very happy I won the first game, but I honestly thought, it was over after rook at h8. So very relieved to take the first match. Look, in this series we've both had to play to the best of our ability. We both stretched ourselves a lot. This is more of a mainstream line. I've elected to this setup. This is one of my bread and butter setups. I like to just keep the center blocked. There's usually castles and f3, and just try a slow push. And so black gets good development as well. And the way opperwezen plays this is perfectly fine. He gets active play. So knight at f5, f6, this is all good moves. So, white's got a lot on the dark squares. So that's why moves like knight at f5, you put a knight on a white square, it attacks dark squares. You play a move like f6, it's putting a pawn on a dark square, it's opening up the rook to f6. So this is a balanced position at this point in time. And I'm still trying to continue my fight on the dark squares. One of the reasons why I like this opening though is white has such good balance. White's also got a lot happening on the light squares back at home. So white's just so solid. I'm not really thinking about being attacked here. I'm thinking, how can I just edge my way into black's position? But yeah, here it's still balanced. I mean, h takes g5, bishop takes g5, queen f7. There's no easy roads in. It's a long match ahead. What I was aiming to do with getting a bishop on g5 is cover the h4 square before trying to play pawn at g4 and push the knight back. So this really is slow grinding stuff. We've got his knight on f5 is the closest piece to my king. So because I can't blow him up, I'm just figuring out how can I just push him back gradually. And he decided not to capture, and this is where I didn't even think much. Maybe g takes h6 is okay, but I prepared bishop at g4 first. Opperwezen's so creative, I didn't even think about it. Here maybe knight takes e3, bishop e3, and h takes g5 was playable, and he picked up a pawn. Instead he's tried to extend with knight at h4, and I've been able to get knight f4 in. I thought twice here, because then I thought after knight e6, queen takes e3, bishop e3, knight takes e3, queen e2. He gets the two pieces for the queen, but his knights aren't really coordinated in a dangerous way. Having said that, I also am not that dangerously coordinated to make use of the queen in hand after that. But he decided against it, went back to f6. Now here I was thinking if I should go knight c7 or knight f8. The trouble is, if I go knight c7, I think knight e3, bishop e3, pawn at f4, and he starts coming in on my dark squares. So I wanted to get that tempo on f8. It is helping black though, it's getting his last inactive piece on a8 in the game. And at this point I remember I was looking at the clock thinking, this is good practical play here, I'm at least up on the clock. Now I was contemplating rook at e5, I believe, if knight e5, knight at e7, but I think it's just a cheap trick that falls over. He could play queen g6 or queen takes d3. In the end I played knight at g3. I actually missed queen takes d3 here. I was just trying to keep my king safe. So after he played queen takes d3, I was a bit disappointed. So I've resorted to something quite drastic straight away, and I've got to calculate this carefully because he's got knight at h3 check. So if the queens come off in the wrong fashion, it could be bad for me. But if he took g takes h6 and I took bishop takes h6, after queen takes d1, my idea was to play rook at h8 check. If he plays king h8, pawn at g7 mates, after king g8, g takes f8 queen. If he goes king f7, I'll get rook f8 check. Maybe the king moves. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm still hanging on my king. I can't just recapture the queen there yet because of knight at h3. Anyway, he played pawn at h3. And then I played bishop g5 here to try to undermine the knight on h4, which looks really risky because I'm trading the queens off. But I've got bishops covering the entry points for the knight, which is generally h4, f4, e3. And now I'm under his clock, so we've only got half a minute left. So this is very dangerous here. I felt bishop at e3 was letting me off the hook a little bit. I think queen takes f1, rook takes f1, knight at h3. I don't know if there was something with rook at g1, rook takes g1, knight f2, king g2, like bishop at h3, king takes f2, rook takes f3. I think that looks like the start of a winning attack. So he's outplaying me in the middle game here. Bishop at e6 is just to give more coverage on h3. I'm really just saying there's no way you're going to attack me from here. And the clocks are low, so I've got to still try to preserve my pieces, but just keep putting things on the king side. Now he's got 10 seconds left. He's got to move. So you'll see pre-moves from my side start coming in here. I've got the safe king. I just need to make dangerous checks. So plenty of ammunition in hand. I expected king takes h6, but he didn't do that. So yeah, queen h5 is looking very deadly there. But yeah, look, first two matches already so closely contested, and yeah, it's come down to the wire with him having less time than myself. So we went straight into the same line this match. So I expect queen d4 to come much quicker. It did. So he had like an extra minute on the clock this match relative to the last one. And I've gone into d5 again, maybe a little bit foolishly because I didn't really like what I got. I felt I had to play a different move to bishop d6 here. I played knight at d6, and if he plays pawn at d7, I've got king e7, and it's a royal mess. But basically here, black is up a piece for a pawn, and I am trying to defend for my life while trying to maintain a material advantage in the hope that I can ride out the storm and come out on top. Now he played queen b4 here. This pins the knight on d6, so he's threatening knight at f7. But I also saw he was probably angling for queen takes b7, knight b7, knight at c6, which brings my king out into the open, and then the queen comes off, and it doesn't look nice at all. I figured if I didn't hit his queen here, I was just giving him options. So even something like bishop at g6, maybe pawn at e5 is playable. Maybe he can still play queen takes b7. If I played knight f6, I felt he could just even go bishop g5, and then that's another potential knight that's hanging. So I thought a while here. I didn't really find what I was looking for. You know, I went through moves like bishop at e8, but then that runs into pawn at f7 or pawn at d7. So I said, okay, I'm going to have to hit the queen. I expected queen b7. And yeah, I probably shouldn't hesitate here. There isn't much else other than capturing the queen. Now, the thing though is I get to recapture my... If he plays knight at c6 and takes on d8, I get to recapture that with the rook, which defends d7. But it's still very dangerous. So before I took this, I saw he's got queen at c6. If I play rook d8 straight away, he's got queen at c6, king e7, queen takes c7. So this queen at e5 is a very deliberate check to actually do an x-ray defense on the c7 pawn. And that way after queen at c6, it seemed that all he had was queen takes b7, which then continues the threat on c6. And here I've used up half my time already, so I'm quite concerned on the clock, but holding. If queen takes b7 here, I was thinking knight at d4. That covers c6, and it also threatens queen takes e2, threatens knight takes c2. I was feeling quite good about that. And then opperwezen did what opperwezen always does, and he threw out a move I just did not expect. Pawn at d4, incredibly resourceful here. If I take d4, that's where the pawn's just been placed. If I take d4, he plays queen takes c7, and maybe that's okay for me. I felt really uncomfortable though, allowing that. If I played queen takes d5, he just takes the queen, rook takes d5, queen at f7, check, king d6, queen d7, mate. So in the end I opted for queen d6. If he takes the queen, I play knight takes d6, the knight covers f7. So now I don't have that knight at d4 option because he's cleverly used his pawn there. So yeah, guys, I don't feel like I'm going to get much of a break from talking. This was just so intense. So he went knight at c8. I thought, I'm looking safe here. I need to kick the queen back. And then I've missed the tactic on the back, and he's found mate. Just enough to get me. I have to move the king up. Rook at e8, I go king f6, but he blocks off my last escape square, and he gets me mated. Incredibly strong attack from opperwezen. I think maybe instead of knight at b6, maybe I have some better defenses. But he'd already worn me down with so many different variations in attacks. So here he played knight f6, d5, and you can see me contemplate here. I don't normally think this early in the opening. What I was trying to do is avoid any tricky preparation he may have had and go down this same sort of bread and butter line. So I've transposed back to the first game I've had with white, same setup. So yeah, at this stage I'm feeling like I've been playing well, but not really. He hasn't really played into my preparation. I'd be interested to know if I avoided his preparation in some of the things I've played. But yeah, I find that strange. I've taken some of these later matches more seriously and done some preparation beforehand. Usually I'll just run into the match. So okay, here's the same sort of idea. I play pawn at g4, covers my knight, attacks his knight, and with his knight on h4, I want to be able to attack that as soon as possible before he can generate anything on my king. So I'm removing the defender on f6, and then my plan is pretty simply bishop at g5. I don't mind if he plays knight g2, I'll just recapture it with the king. So here I think he's maybe contemplating if he should play g takes f6. So yeah, bishop at g5. I mean, I could have played the bishop on e3 to g5. It's probably okay, but you know, it's a good defender as well. The bishop on e3. So yeah, I wasn't going to get hung up on such decisions so early in the game. So I made a decision to play practically and look for natural moves. So okay, I've had to now move that bishop there because I haven't had another one in hand. So it probably works out the same. And so yeah, so now I'm pushing him back a little bit. I've got good coverage on dark and light squares in my half. So now I'm trying to be resourceful here and attack some of his dark square weaknesses. Trouble is, he's got plenty to defend with. He's got bishops, pawns. I'm not coming in on his light squares, so it's still not easy. So I'm still just going to hit pawn at g5. I thought he'd play pawn at g7. And then only after he played pawn e7 I realised his queen has dropped its guard on e6. So I came in with knight f4. This has two threats. One is taking the pawn on e6, the other is taking the knight on g6 and playing knight at h6. That's very deadly. So he's played f takes g5, so if I play knight g6 he plays queen g6 and knight at h6 is no longer a threat. So I've avoided taking the knight and gone for the e6 pawn. And now I'm just trying to make weaknesses on f7, g7. I've got that pawn to capture on g5. So I'm pretty much here. My aim of the game is stay up on the clock, keep my king safer than his king. See, bishop g5 would be a mistake because bishop takes bishop, knight takes bishop, bishop at e3 check would win the knight on g5. So I take the knight first, so I've still got the bishop covering e3. Pawn at f7 to cover the fork threat, and now I'm trying to get down on g6, g7, sorry. So I'm contemplating knight f6. I thought that let him back in the game a bit after ef, bishop at e3, so went down this path. King takes h6, knight e6 check, discover check, covers off the back g7, then bishop at g7 is dangerous. Here if bishop at g7 check, king g8, and he's still safe with his knight on g6, and my attack is slowed down a little bit. So in fact, rook at g7 threatening, knight takes f7, rook h7, much stronger. And after rook takes g6, if he plays h takes g6, bishop at g7, it's hard to stop mate there. So opperwezen resigned that one, and I'm now up 3-1. So to this point in the game, I was really feeling, to play with white really has an advantage here. We've been playing so well with white, both of us. So a little bit like tennis, I felt it's like holding serve with white. Now I'm normally playing the white side of this, but I felt I wanted to mix it up. He's played knight f3 here, and I was conscious of moves like knight d5 or knight b5. Probably more so knight b5. I honestly forgot about knight d5. And you'll see what I mean in a moment here. So if my queen takes the pawn on b2, there's no longer a pin on that knight, and it starts attacking c7. Now, the move knight f3 is critical because it guards the e5 square. So after knight d5, I can't play queen e5 to defend c7. And that queen on the d file is just so dangerous. So already here, I'm kicking myself going, this is just so bad. c7 is so hard to defend. I've had to resort to one of the ugliest looking moves on the board, which is king d8. In hindsight, after a3, I should probably bring the queen back to d6. Just hold on to the back. I'll be a pawn up, I'll be down on development, but this is horrible. This is 1-0 already in my mind. If I don't take the knight, he grabs my rook. Now pawn at b6 is on. If I don't take it, king b8, pawn at c7 mates, so I have to sack the queen. And then I expect him to win with check from here. So I thought the most accurate finish is actually rook b1 check, pawn at b5, rook b5, ab, pawn at c5. He's just short of one pawn at the moment from pawn at c5 working here. So the idea of rook b1 should be just to grab an extra pawn. He actually took with the bishop, which wasn't check, so I got a few more moves in. And yeah, maybe here I have better ways of defending, but it's pretty dire already. Maybe knight at a4 is good for covering some dark squares. Maybe bishop at d6 helps to block off the d file. But you know what? It's looking so good for white already. Maybe bishop at d6 is best. Then I have the option of king c7 running back behind the bishop on d6. Here I'm just stranded. If I run back to b6, queen at b5 check, either king a7, king c6, there's pawn at b6 and pawn at c7 to mate. So I've got to take this bishop, and that's game over in 2 moves. 2 queens hitting a king right in the middle. So disappointing match that one. The opperwezen absolutely ripped me to shreds. I just missed knight d5. Okay, so I'm feeling like 3-2 here. We're in a tight battle. This is actually something I prepared. So this is one of the lines I prepared. I thought he might try e4 d5, and I thought I'd try something different, just skipping past. So I'd normally play e takes d5. Objectively, e takes d5 is probably better. Who knows? I mean, it's like move 2, but this was more so to throw him off the scent. Having said that, it didn't really feel like I threw him off much. He was moving pretty quickly. I like defending e5 here. Maybe I should play a4 here. The general idea I had was to make a similar setup on my side, knight d2, knight b3 and get rook e4 in. And I was a bit disappointed after b5. He pushed my bishop back to b3 and took the b3 square away from my knight on d2. I also felt my bishop on g5 was awkwardly placed because he could play h6 and it didn't have a good square to go to. It just had to go to h4 where it's open to being captured. So I kind of felt, yeah, I got a bit of the opening prep in here, but not really what I wanted. If I play a4 here, b takes, rook takes a4, pawn at g4, he starts opening me up on the e5 square. So rook e4 here is to attack d4, also cover g4. Also block off the bishop on b7. I don't mind if he captures that rook. But it's an awkward position here. Both of us, there's no trades happened yet. Not one piece has been traded. So it's a little bit difficult to maneuver for both sides. Maybe bishop c5 is sensible here. Looking at castle. He got ambitious. Knight takes e5. And I wasn't sure this was accurate. I felt after rook e5, if he bishop f3, I got another knight on d2 covering f3, so if he takes my rook on e5, I'm going to capture with a knight. It's going to hit his queen on d7. My bishop is now playing on the diagonal. So I didn't feel that move was quite right. Maybe it was a bit of impatience here where he was looking for a way to break and couldn't find one, but I was not too upset to see knight takes e5. And pawn at g4 is a good move, so then I kind of reconsidered, is knight e5 so bad? The way I saw this is I've got an overburdened knight on f3. I need to allow that knight on d2 to back up that knight on f3. Let's get rid of a piece on e5. Let's block the bishop on b7. So that's the idea behind rook e4. And now I'm looking at trying to get my own knight onto e5 and hit that queen. So in these sorts of, semi-blocked positions, it's really important that you control when the trades come off, and you want them to come off in your favour. So I spoke before about not playing a4 too early because pawn at g4 was going to hurt. And now I feel I control the centre a bit better, so I'm really looking for some trades here to get in on d7. Looking good on the clock again. So knight was taking h4. I was tempted to take the queen on d7, and not really from anything calculated, just a feeling because I played opperwezen before. I just said I'm just going to keep the position locked down, avoid the tricks. Now here, if knight takes d7, he's got things like rook at h1 check, king h1, knight f2 check, king g1, knight takes d1. If I try knight at f6 check, there's king e7, which is holding on. So I just thought I'm just going to get rid of his knight, keep a safe king. I'm still hitting his queen. Got plenty to be happy about. So yeah, very, very practical, very strategical my decisions. If queen d6 here, I was actually thinking knight takes f7, king takes f7, pawn at f5, something like bishop at d7 to defend e6, queen h5 starts playing, but he went queen e7, so it was just, now c6 is open to a king and queen fork, so pretty straightforward. I'm getting his queen, I've got checks on the king, he's nowhere near my king, so I've played a better middle game there, so I felt it started coming undone when he played knight c takes e5. So just keeping my neck ahead slightly here, I'm at 4-2, only because I've won one of the games with black. Otherwise white has had the victories all along. We go straight into this line we played before. And here I felt, look, maybe d5 is good, maybe it isn't, but I'm going to have to switch it up. Because, while you're playing a match, you can't go away and find the best moves. Let's just throw in something different. And all I'm trying to do here is remove the knight on f5. Funnily enough, after I played this, I thought, I bet he's thinking something like pawn at e7. It's so typically him. The trick to be mindful of here is if knight takes e7, knight at d6 mates, because c takes d6, knight takes d6 is smothered mate. So I just opted to let my queen go, because I was capturing his queen, making a threat on e2. I've got queen at e2 mate threat. If I was to play bishop e7, he gets knight g7, he starts opening up the king side. The other option was queen takes e7, knight e7, bishop takes c4. That was also quite playable. So knight c3 covering e2, and here I was tossed up between either pawn at b4 or bishop b4. Bishop b4 is a little bit more direct because it's a pin, it's threatening a mate in one, but the bishop on f8 is also covering g7. I've got 2 pawns in hand, I need to make the pawns useful. So I've opted to use the pawn, and here's where I thought, okay, here he comes, he's going to make use of this one tempo and then find something brilliant. A little bit of an irrational thought, but he actually did. Now I nearly played b takes c3 here, and that loses. As I thought if I take the knight, he doesn't have a knight for d5 or b5. Bishop c7, king takes c7, and I'm covered. I've got the dark squares covered. In fact, though, knight at e8 is very dangerous. King d8, pawn at c7 check, king e8, queen at d8 mate. I'd have to run the king up to b6, queen at c7 check, king a6, queen takes c4. That's not fun. So here I'm thinking, oh, okay, so I didn't pin that knight. He's already making me a problem. Now, so if I play d6, he can still play knight takes d6, because if I play b takes c3, he plays, well, he's got queen at e8 is a mate threat. I was more concerned about knight takes c4, so I'm glad I didn't play b takes c3. But the point was knight d6, bishop d6, bishop d6, c takes d6, pawn at c7, and he's really got an attack going all of a sudden. So here I'm expecting knight d6. The idea of d6 is covering c7, opening up the bishop on c8. But every tempo, every move is counting here, and he's played knight d6. I thought, oh great, we're both thinking sharp here. Yeah, so honestly, I kind of missed queen at e8 here. I was seeing whether bc was worthwhile. I was thinking if I should play pawn at d2 here, in fact. And then I went for this combination here where I saw if bishop d6, pawn at d2. I didn't expect him to take d2 because I get the knight with check, and then bishop g4 check helps my rook defend my king on the back rank. I'm still very nervous about c takes d6 and then a pawn coming on c7, but it is better with the rook covering d8. Now, if he puts a pawn on f3, I can also take f3 and play pawn e2 and get some checks in. So I thought he'd play knight at f3 here. He used the bishop, so I thought, all right, the attack or defend. I'm gonna do a semi-attack, and I found a resource here where if he goes knight e2, bishop e2, king e2, I've got knight at d4 check. My queen's getting in. It's very dangerous. So he's got to take d2. Queen at d4 check played first to fork the king and the bishop. Because I prefer to take that bishop on d6 with my queen. It's much safer than opening up the position with c takes d6. So happy with the defensive resource I found there. Now we hit with knight at f5, and I semi-blundered here. I actually thought knight at c4 was playable after knight takes d6 and would be mating him. I quickly saw it wasn't, so I had to play bishop at f4 to guard my back ranks again. Now normally here you wouldn't try to give away a knight because it could be a dangerous piece to help penetrate, but I had a look at it, it was safe enough. My other rook is now covering the back rank as well. And here while I'm down, a queen for a piece on material, I've now got the initiative, I've got a safe king, I've got pieces in the center, I'm capturing material, I'm attacking h4 now, up on time, feeling good about this one. But wow, the tactics and the number of variations we've had to go through. My mouth hasn't stopped commentating this whole time just to try to cover all the variations. I thought here maybe I can get away with pawn at d6 and there'll be some mate, but I thought knight at d6 would just be safer to cover b7. Bishop at e6, getting in on h3, and I've got mate to follow here. So yeah, I saw that the two knights in the middle make a nice mating net. I get to deliver mate, so really happy with how I played that game, switching up early with bishop at e6, and seeing all the forks and the resources to hold the back while attacking up front. We're both pushing it here. So here I'm also thinking, well, bishop b5 straight away, or do I try to get him to play e6 first? We're thinking like moves 2 and 3 here, both him and I. Having the pawn on e6 is slightly better. It just blocks off that bishop on c8. And, you know, I was kind of prepared to go into one of these. I thought he might try this with d5 as well, not just play queen takes d5. After here, I'm not entirely sure what's best, but I've just played for the dark squares. So if you play something like knight d5, I'd probably play knight takes d5, c takes d5, pawn at d6 possibility. Now one of the ideas of pawn at e5 is if your opponent plays knight g4, that protects your knight on f3 from being attacked from g4 and h5 immediately. I've also got the knight on c3 protecting e4. So he's played bishop at h5 to throw to knight e5. So I want to attack that bishop as soon as I can. And here's just a matter of where, again, I can't blow up my opponent. Moves like pawn at d6 look attractive, but honestly, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, bishop takes d6 gives him development. So I'm looking for slow progression here. If I play h3, you can play knight f2, rook f2. I've got a few dark square weaknesses, so arguable if I should use the pawn from the side to go to h3 or push up, but this really guarantees a very safe king. And then, you know, d4 is quite natural to follow. So here I think he's contemplating h5, or you know, he didn't want to take it. I just wasn't going to let him come in with a pawn on g4, so I played d4. And here's where I felt, okay, now I can open up things. I've got a safe king. That h-file isn't really going to open up because I've got two bishops hitting h6. And now he's got some weaknesses, and I'm very safe. So yeah, everything's in the right place. He's got two pieces on the side, so I'm going to go sack a piece. Let's just get active as fast as we can. So I'm playing pretty quickly here. This is pretty devastating already. Quite hard to defend against pawn at c7, knight f6. So yeah, at this stage I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like I'm playing just as well with the white pieces as he is. I've just got to keep holding the games with white. And you know, this is all over pretty soon. I've got all the options. He's nowhere near my king. Queen at f6 is now a threat. Pawn e7. So he determined it was resignable. Okay, so this now took it to, I think that's 6-2 actually. So I think that actually I'd won the match here. So certainly feeling good about that. So we're now playing for points, and you know, it's the Crazy House World Championship is tight. I think it's worthwhile playing for the points. You know, with particularly for the grand final, if you know, if there's a tie for second and third, these every match is going to count, every game is going to count. So I've gone for bishop at e6 again. He's gone for the same line. And queen c3, hitting g7. So I figured I'd get rid of that knight on f5. I was going to play d5 here straight away. Went for queen e7 just to control the e file first. And could have gone knight at d5 here. There's nothing too special, but d5 just stops knight at d5. And of course he finds something resourceful here. Pawn at d6, lovely move. If c takes d6, knight at c7, he's really making my queen look silly on e7, because this only works because my own queen is blocking the bishop on f8. So now if queen takes d6, knight at b5 is awkward. After pawn c6, I can't even play bishop d6 because of queen takes g7. This is just a nice fine pawn at d6. So I opted to try to hold on to this. And again, he's so resourceful. I thought he had nothing. He's got bishop takes a7. If I take with the rook, he's got queen e3, and then he grabs the rook. And then my queen side is all open. I've got no development going on. He's making me look pretty terrible here. Queen at e2. I figured if I leave my king on e8, then queen takes b5, c takes b5, knight at c7, and then grabbing the rook on a8 is going to finish me pretty quickly. The queen on c3 also opens up to the bishop on c8. So I tried to defend gallantly out on e7. I feel like if he changed his move order just slightly, bishop b6 check before queen takes b5, it forces my king to d7, and then queen takes b5 is more effective because I can't capture it, because then he'll have queen c7, queen d8 mate. So the point there being, the queen on e2 while it was still there would still be covering the e file if he played bishop b6 first before playing queen takes b5. Minor point anyway. White's still stronger here. I played queen at e4 to try to defend the pawn on d5, but it was a bit futile because he plays this anyway and my queen's pinned and he's still trading the queen off. So I played bishop f5 to try to get the rook to cover e8, but at best I'm just going to be down material if he plays knight takes a8. So again, destroyed. He just attacked so strong with white today. Even the games I won with black, I felt I had to defend 5 or 6 times over. So yeah, I'm quite fortunate I was able to do that. Certainly not complaining. And he made a sensible decision just to grab the rook. Black has no play here. Rook at d8's coming. If bishop e7, queen takes, bishop takes queen, queen at c7 check, king e8, rook at d8, bishop takes rook, queen takes bishop mate. I played knight at d5 to try to cover c7, but he found mate very swiftly here. Queen at c8 is a nice move. I take it, rook at d8 mates. I've tried to sidestep it, but bishop d8 covers off f6, and then he's got the discovery, or pawn at d7, even wins there. So I'm up 6-3 here, and looking to just finish strong with white. So again, I was happy to go into this same line again. This is very familiar to me. Okay, got the same opening start, knight at f5 expected. And yeah, this is interesting. I mean, I've had good results with this as white, but it's really more a strategic thing. It's not that this opening is bad for black. It's just the kind of opening that makes it harder for black to play creatively. And that's how opperwezen will like to play. Will like to create something interesting, pull out some interesting tactics. It really just prepares the white king side with so much solid defense that it's hard to penetrate. So he's gone in with knight h4 again. I've gone in with bishop g5, trying to undermine the knight on h4 before it becomes a threat. And I could sense here he was trying to cook something up. And I was quite right about that. I was surprised at the move that came out. It was more tricky than I had anticipated. So here I thought he's just going to back off with knight g6, and he comes up with rook f3. Now if I play g takes f3, he's got bishop g5, queen g5, and I have all these dark weaknesses all of a sudden. I can't do anything with the rook he sacrificed. I thought maybe bishop h4, and then he's got maybe rook f1. So he's taken the piece. I've tried to keep it sharp as well by taking on e7. He picks up a pawn here with rook f1, queen f1, but I still have a lot of safety. So bishop at g5 can then come in. I still get to hit that knight. But the idea of bishop e7 is just to prevent black from getting dominance on the dark squares. I don't mind if he runs away with a pawn. But if I opted for g takes f3, I think bishop takes g5 is looking good for black. So he decided to trade rook, so I now get the f-file for the queen. And I'm feeling like I've got something to play for here. So the trouble with defending with bishop f6 is now I get to take on f6 and a hole opens up on h6 after g takes f6. So while black has won a pawn, I'm looking to get in very quickly here. So opperwezen ticking down on time again. And it's tough here. I mean, if black brings the knight back from h4, then the initiative is lost to some extent. So he's in the end resorted to this. And now I just need to punch holes in the king side before he's able to put pieces on. So rook at f7, threatening bishop at g7 mate, also threatening the queen. Rook at g6 covers the mate threat. So what black's trying to do is put pieces on and not trade much. I didn't feel that knight f7 was going to deliver the goods after king g7, bishop at h6, king takes f7. I went for something a little bit more tricky. I'm looking for this queen at g8 smothered mate, but to do that I need to get a diagonal check on f6. Bishop at f6, or if he plays rook g5 here, queen f6 check. But in the end he got convinced into putting a pawn on g7 and I got my smothered mate. So that covers off the king from g7, but it also blocks the rook on g6 from defending g8. So here you see we've written a few comments to each other. Very tough games. He said here, I prepared for hours. I didn't expect that. You know, I was thinking, wow, like we're both taking it that seriously. I admitted to him as well that I'd also prepared for hours, but I felt like he vastly avoided my preparation. I prepared all sorts of unusual lines that I know opperwezen is capable of. So look, thank you to opperwezen for you know, putting up an outstanding match. That was, I felt, one of the most closely contested matches. Very tactical, very sharp. Strategy was in there, tactics is in there. That's everything Crazy House should be. This Crazy House World Championship is, you know, some fantastic matches. I'm really happy to see it for the game. Okay, I'll give my voice a break. I've got 2 matches remaining. One is versus All You Need Is Left, one is versus 12 Teen. I'm currently now on 3.5 out of 5, 12 Teen's on 4 out of 4. I think we're about halfway through at the moment. I think we've played about 14 out of the 28 games. So now with opperwezen joining us, everyone's played at least 2 games, I think. I've played 5 now. Some have played 4, some have played 3. So yeah, we'll be seeing more of these games. Yeah, I really enjoyed this series. Really had to play to the best of my ability and prepare for it as well. And hats off to opperwezen for putting up such a great match. Okay, it's now just past 2:30 AM. I'm going to go grab some sleep. Thanks for tuning in again. Really hope the viewers are enjoying this. Fantastic game. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.